navigating your mental, emotional, and physical health. Hi, I'm Dianne A, and here at Someone Gets Me with an exciting guest for you today. Her name is Rose Gage, and I have met her in some really amazing online communities, and I just instantly said, oh, you have to be on the show. She's young, dynamic, and she has a belief about the holistic part of our life in a much bigger way than what you mostly hear that word holistic meaning. And I really am inspired by her, and I know you will be too. So get your favorite drink. Might want to grab a pen and paper because I'm sure you're going to want to take notes as we welcome onto the show Rose Gage. Welcome, Laura.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited that you're here because when I first met you and I first saw you, I'm like, oh, she has such a nice spirit that also has strength behind it. And that's a nice combination. And so the first question I'd like to ask you is to share with us a little bit about any time in your life where maybe you didn't feel understood or you felt different than other people. Like, how has it been for you? Because you're young and you have such a progressive way of seeing things. I'm not so sure you've been understood the whole time.
Oh, when have I not been understood? I from a very young age was a strange person who I used to read stories about religions because I have memories from being 7 or 8 and just being fascinated with the idea of divine or ecstatic experience. And being raised in a fairly conservative Christian household, it wigged out my parents that I was like constantly reading books about Buddhism and Islam and all these things. And I always felt like, why doesn't everyone else feel excited by this? What's going on? And I think throughout my life, I've always gone back to that over and over again, like this understanding of what is the relationship with the divine, or however you want to put it, and how can I experience closeness to that. And for me, when I talk to people who don't have that viewpoint, it just confuses me so much.
Yes, of course, because you have that deeper connection. So how do you live that? Because it's such a vast way of looking at things, everything from Christianity and Islam and Buddhism and all of the different diverse ways. And so I'm curious about how you've been able to incorporate these different philosophies into your life. Like how has that been working? That just sounds so exciting.
Well, I did have this really funny realization a couple weeks ago. I actually texted a friend of mine and said, oh my gosh, I'm a monotheist. This is crazy. Because I think I spent a long period of my time kind of a little bit more eclectic in my beliefs and things like that. And, when you have a wide understanding of all the different religious beliefs people have, you start to see a little bit of the universality of it. And I don't like to say that to degrade anyone's beliefs, because I think it's so important to have those really specific rituals and touchstones to access the divine. But for me, the realization that if I could access that just 10% of my life, that it makes this huge difference. And especially dealing with chronic depression and anxiety my entire life. Once I realized that, I said, oh, this is how you live. This is what we were doing as humans. Oh, I get it now.
Oh, there you go. Right. So you said you've been dealing with chronic anxiety and depression your whole life. Say a little bit more about that kind of journey for people. A lot of people listen to this podcast talk about those things. So tell us a little bit about that journey and how it's been for you.
It's been tough. I can remember even in middle school, having suicidal ideation and self-injury practices just to deal with everything. Looking back on it and being in the profession I am now, I know that I was picking up on lots of other people's things at the time. And so I do have different coping mechanisms now. I also, and I've been struggling with this still. I mean, I still struggle with it. I don't think, but for me now, the mental and emotional symptoms are a message. And to understand that they have a purpose and they're not just who I am. Because I think that I spent a long period of high school, college, really thinking depression is who I am. Anxiety is who I am. This is something I struggle with. This is how it is. And then really working with patients, once I started working with patients, I understood that actually discomfort is okay. Discomfort is a message from my soul telling me something's off. You're not in alignment. And instead of sitting in the depression and sitting in the anxiety, I was doing lots of avoiding. lots of avoiding. You know, just if it's from listening to watching tons of TV, like binge watching Netflix, to being on lots of medications, avoiding the issues in my marriage, all of those things. I was avoiding discomfort. And this moment that I said, you know what is this? What is the message? Was the moment everything kind of clicked together for me on what my heart path was.
Oh, that's so true. You know, I say all the time to people, you're not your emotions. We're much bigger than our emotions. We're much bigger than even our thoughts, you know, and I have goosebumps listening to you because it's so true. It's so true. And the moment you realize that the symptoms are a message, they're not your identity, you're free, just like that.
Yeah. And it's like an unwinding. It's not like everything disappears.
No.
But it's an unwinding. And I appreciate the unwinding. I love that feeling.
The unwinding of that spring that was just so tight. And that was sending off all these messages, and now it can like relax a little bit more all the time.
Yeah.
You know. So do you think that you use your personal experience and history with anxiety and depression as something now that might even be an asset in your profession and your work with people? Because you do herbal healing and you do all kinds of neat things. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But do you use that personal experience as kind of like an adjunct in your work?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I wouldn't necessarily consider myself a healer. And I don't think that my heart path was to reach out and heal people. I think that my heart path was really to help connect humans and my patients more with the divine, because that's what I was yearning for from a young age. And instead of figuring that out on a spirit level, I was intellectualizing it by reading and researching and getting a religious studies degree and doing all these things. Like my mind went on overdrive.
Right.
And I didn't really understand that it's not just my mental brain. And so I view what I do with people as a continuation of the work I'm already doing, that I do in my personal life. That all I'm really trying to do is connect people with the divine, with divine love. To say, look, this is amazing. You feel this for 2 seconds. Yes. And look at all the things you can do in your life.
That's so true.
Yeah. So I think that I've, ever since going through school, I did think, I'm a healer, right? Like you go into acupuncture, you go into Chinese medicine, and you're going, okay, now I'm on this healing path. And it hasn't been until recently that I've really understood, no, I'm like I really just want to bring people together between the divine and themselves and really understand and be like a translator for other people's roadmap. I am not responsible for healing them.
Amen. I say that all the time to people. Say, "Oh, thank you. You saved my life." I said, "No. I'm the bridge. I'm the connector.
Yeah.
I might have a flashlight and I have a little bit more experience on the road, but I am not the healer. The healer is the divine. I'm reminding you that you can be connected in these cool ways, and so it's delightful to speak to somebody who can get the nuance, because our culture just uses words so quickly. And, oh, you're a healer, you do this and you do that. Okay, so you work with herbs and acupuncture, and you really sit with people and help them find that divine within them and help them awaken to their own beauty. And that, in my mind, is the bridge. It's the catalyst. It's the person that's like, as Mary Burmeister said from Jin Shin Jitsu, she talks about being the jumper cables. And,
yeah.
And I like that phrase. Like, I can think about me being a jumper cable. Like, I see that image and I'm like, I'm just helping wake it up in you. It's already in there. I'm just giving you a little jolt.
Right. Exactly. I always used to say, I'm just a conduit for this, guys. Like, I'm not really doing much.
Right. Well, and here's the thing. You are doing much. We are doing much. When we decide to step into that place, to be that conduit, to be those jumper cables, that is a vital part in the big picture. Mm-hmm. So we're not claiming ego-wise, oh, I'm the healer. You're not claiming that. What you are claiming is, I have the skill set and the understanding and the calling to be that jumper cable, that conduit. And without the conduit, the message doesn't travel quite the same to the person. So it's a very important role, actually. It's just not your ego taking credit for, I'm the healer.
Well, and of course, the goal always is that, I won't see them again eventually.
Yes.
I would love for them to have their own skills. And then we understand that eventually, as you develop those skills, you can pass it on to people in your own life. You don't have to send other people my way. That's just one of my big beliefs, is that just by being ourselves, being our true self, mm-hmm. can create huge change in the world.
Absolutely. That authenticity and being true, mm-hmm. in the real word, true, right?
True. Yeah.
So do you ever have any issues with overthinking? Do you ever find yourself thinking? Because when you made that comment about keeping it in your head, and I could so see you doing that. So do you ever have those trouble where you get in those overthinking loops and you're like, I can't get out of this? And if you do, what you're saying, yes, could you give us a little bit of an example or two about things that you've learned how to do to calm that down a little bit? Overthinking and procrastination are the two biggest, most mentioned issues in emails I receive about the show. So there are people who are wondering how to calm their brain down or get their brain to cooperate a little bit more, not just be going all the time and not, get high or drunk. So how do we do it in a healthy way that's aligned, mind, body, and spirit? So do you have any tips?
So, I have a long history of overthinking because I actually was diagnosed with ADHD when I was younger and went on lots of medication that didn't really do anything for me. And I know the signs now when that's happening, because the way my ADD manifests is I hear auditory clicking in my head, actually. It's handy to recognize when that's happening. But I've done the gamut. I went through holistic work with naturopaths, Chinese medicine practitioners, acupuncture, all those things to help treat these learning disabilities, learning differences, and the overthinking, just rapid overthinking. And it wasn't until the last year or so that I felt this huge difference. And it was so simple. It was so simple. It was so frustrating how simple it was. I stopped trying to control it and I just observed. I went back into that half step where you go, well, I'm going to do it anyways. So let's just acknowledge when it happens. Mm-hmm. And then the more I acknowledged it happening, the less it kept happening. And the faster I would stop that spiral, right? The sooner that I would go, oh, nope, don't take that bait. It's okay. And it's not like it has disappeared completely. It still happens. The other part of this is that Chinese medicine really gives you this symbolism around overthinking. And overthinking is related to the spleen and to the digestion in general. And so really understanding overthinking as a symbol of I'm trying to digest too much. Trying to do too much right now. And most people will tell you, Laura, you take on way too many projects. You do way too many things. And so by understanding my overthinking, which is a primary symptom of spleen qi deficiency, I understood, oh, I'm trying to do too much. And so once I understood that story that was happening, I understood observation and cutting back is what I needed to do.
And so when you notice it and then you cut back, did you notice that the overthinking was less of an issue for you? Did it relieve some of the stress and tension around it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it actually, once I realized that connection, it released the tension of cutting back, because I think most of us, the idea of cutting back is really stressful too. Mm-hmm. And it just, for me, relating it to physical symptoms. So I'll say that my overthinking is absolutely translates into physical symptoms. So this is exactly, I'm like the perfect example of a holistic model of the body, where you have your soul and then you have the mental body, emotional body, and the physical body. Most of my illness symptoms I have are digestive related. The morning I would go to school, a grad school, and, I'd go to clinic where you're overthinking chronically. I would get in the car, sit in the car, open up the car door, and throw up. And then I'd be fine the rest of the day. And that's how my anxiety came out. It was just, you're overthinking this. You're about to go into something really stressful. You can't cut back because you're in grad school. What the heck are you going to do with that? And so I channeled everything into my physical body. And it wasn't until years later that I recognized that those physical symptoms were without a doubt emotional, mental related, and they were spiritual related down the line. They were soul related, because I still didn't really know how that path was in alignment with my heart. And so now instead, when I recognize the overthinking and the need to cut back, I step back and I say, is this in alignment with my heart path? Because ultimately, all disease comes from the heart.
All disease comes from the heart, ultimately?
Yes.
Okay, you're going to have to say more about that. Nobody's ever said that to me yet.
So it's a very much a Chinese medicine concept, and especially the Chinese medicine school that I'm kind of a part of is this idea that all disease comes from the heart. So the heart is the empress of the body. She's in charge, but she shouldn't have to do anything. All she has to do is, she's the empress. She points. She says, do this for me. The problem is that other parts of our body try to take over. So like the liver in Chinese medicine is the official. He's like the wedding planner who's like running around like crazy. And that's okay to a certain extent, except when in our life, we're not following our heart path. When we're not following our heart path, our heart starts to go, well, you're not really feeding me at all. So I'm just going to let the liver go crazy. I'm just going to let it take over. And if you just let that aspect of yourself take over, then you end up down a path years down the line going, you know what? I don't actually want to be doing what I'm doing right now. Mm-hmm. So if I relate the heart to the soul and to this idea in Chinese medicine that the heart is this perfect combination of earth and heaven, and that humanity is this manifestation of the intertwining of earth and heaven, and the heart is the purest manifestation of that, and we're ignoring what the heart path is asking us, then of course it manifests all sorts of mental, emotional, and physical symptoms.
That makes it also logical and not so seemingly accidental or mysterious. Like people say, oh, I can't believe this, I can't believe that. I'm like, well, there's causes for it. And I look at it a lot metaphysically, right? Like stomach problems and digestion means I'm having a hard time stomaching life, which is very similar to what you're saying it is, right?
Yeah.
And how all addiction and stuff is a broken heart, is a disease of the heart. So it's interesting how metaphysics and Chinese medicine have some similar ideas about how it shows up in the body, that it is a disconnection spiritually and emotionally and mentally, and the physical being gives us that perfect feedback for where the disconnection is. That's fascinating.
And it's just a lens, like that's why there's the overlap. Like I work with the naturopath I work with in my acupuncture practice. She has a background in naturopathic medicine, but also Native American medicine. And we'll sit and have conversations about how to view the body, how these things manifest, and they overlap all the time. There's this beautiful kind of interchange between, we're all humans in the end, right? So this is what I've been pursuing. This is why I think like that need, that want to understand the divine from a very young age has translated into what the work that I do with people. And I used to do this in a sneaky way. I used to have people come in who had chronic pain, and I'd be like, okay, we'll treat your low back pain. And I would give them all sorts of logic around why you can do points that aren't actually on the low back, and it still treats low back pain. And I started to not actually treat their pain. I started to treat the spirit of their organs and the emotions of their organs. And they would get 20 times more pain relief than they had before. Because as a caveat here, I hate treating pain. But when you're an acupuncturist, everyone comes in and thinks, oh, you can treat pain. And what I recognized in my practice was that if I actually treated the stress, the insomnia, the emotional imbalance, the mental imbalance, and really helped bring the heart path in alignment, and therefore all the other organs, and I would get 20 times better results with pain relief than anything else.
So that's treating the cause and the underlying things rather than just putting a Band-Aid on it. Yeah. And in Western society, we're trained, put the Band-Aid on and keep on going. And I think that's one of the things I appreciate about all my acupuncture friends and people who study Chinese medicine is it's the underneath. It's like, what's the core? Because I'm a big one on let's look at the cause. If we're going to put a Band-Aid on a cyst, that infection's in there until we get it out. So let's take care of the cause. Then we won't need Band-Aids after a while. Yeah. So you were sneaky and treating all their inner causes without them knowing.
Yeah. And I think the biggest growth that I've done in my practice actually is to no longer be sneaky. Like there's a time for that. And I absolutely in the past year or so have decided, no, you know what? All you guys need to learn that it's not about the physical pain. And I don't want to sneak it anymore. And if you can't tolerate that idea, then we're not a good fit. And so that's been one of the kind of biggest changes that has happened in the past year, 2 years, where I've just decided that it's time to be fully visible and to be completely woo-woo.
So when did you get out of school? How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this 7 years now.
7 years.
8 years. I don't know. 2012.
8 years.
I'm not good with time.
That is really, really magical. I love this story. So do you have a success story of somebody that you helped that maybe didn't really understand what was happening and you were able to help them see the way, and without breaking any confidentiality, could you just kind of share about like how was a person when they got there? What were you thinking about as you were helping them? And then
Mm-hmm.
kind of how did it all unfold? I think it's really interesting because a lot of people in Western society do not understand sometimes a different way of thinking. And so I really would like people to understand how you think about these things, because here you are, this inquisitive person your whole life, and really wanting to be that conduit, and connection's the correction. And so can you give us a cool example of when you were, when you did that, somebody you think about right away when you go, oh yeah.
Yeah, I think about kind of a combination of almost all my fertility patients, because I do a lot of work with fertility, and there's a couple of them, absolutely, without a doubt. So the fertility work I do is very specific, and most of the time my fertility patients come in and they have they're like, I have PCOS, or I have painful periods or something, and I'm not getting pregnant. And they just want me to write them an acupuncture prescription. Come in once a week, let's do this. And one of the first conversations I have with all my fertility patients is about the emotions that are involved in what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And really the transformation that is necessary. And one of the biggest parts of this is the acceptance that you can't push to receive this. Mm-hmm. You have to be open to receive.
Right. You can't push to receive. You have to be open.
You know, this idea of the speed of the divine, the earth can be instantaneous, or it can be as slow as it really wants to be. And this is so many of my fertility people, sometimes it's taken 2 years, sometimes it takes 3 months. But all of them have said, this wasn't just about becoming a mother anymore. And the reason why I went into becoming, doing fertility was because what I saw in infertility clinics and IVF was, it was just about becoming a parent. Doesn't matter how much we deteriorate your system. Doesn't matter how much we pull upon, like most of the fertility medications really sap the body. Most of those pregnancies are very deficient pregnancies. And the patients I work with, to naturally get to that point of being able to conceive on a physical, on an emotional, a mental, and a spiritual level, means that it means 20 times more than going through IVF ever did.
How powerful too, because now that person's healed and connected, and so as they have their baby and move forward, then that still stays there. There's none of this disconnection or disjointedness about that relationship and about the whole part of it. Wow.
When you work in fertility, it's all uphill battle of, it's not just physical. Mm-hmm. And so I think that those patients are the people who I think about right away. I'm like, okay, most of the time they come in very type A. They are constantly asking me questions. They're constantly sending me Google articles. Oh my gosh. I like forbid Google for all my patients. And by the time we're done working, it's really about, it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to not know. I am open and ready for this. And I almost wish that everyone had that mindset when they came in, like this magical goal of getting pregnant. Because if we all had that really strong goal, I think that we would feel more motivated to kind of make these big changes in our life. And it's not just for people who end up with a baby. I have plenty of patients who decide not to. I have patients who decide to leave their relationships because working has helped them realize, actually, I'm not going to bring a baby into this family. Things like that. So I think it's more powerful to actually take a reflective, soul-centered approach to getting pregnant.
Absolutely. I could totally agree with that. And I was just thinking, when you're talking about like everybody being pregnant like that, I'm thinking, like if that consciousness like being pregnant with good ideas, or being pregnant with the book I'm writing, or the whatever, the fill in the blank thing. That consciousness of being open to receive and to birth it is much more organic to the way we're built than this whole, act like a machine and
Yeah.
push it out and that kind of thing too. So I think it would be more friendly to the body, not as stressful and not as difficult for our organs and our electrical system to like do whatever it is that we're wanting to do. Now that makes sense to me.
Well, and we all have these natural rhythms for creativity and giving birth to something. Yes, I'm so grateful to my fertility work, because I don't think I would have come to the part I am in my practice now without it, to recognize that we're all engaging in these same rhythms, baby or not.
Nice. Oh, I love that. I love that. I think it's so cool. Connection is the correction. And our body's like that perfect feedback loop,
Yes.
And so if I was to come to you like, oh, Laura Rose, I found out who you are and help me. So what if somebody was to come to you, or that, all the listeners are going, wow, I want to meet her. I want to work with her. I want to see, what she can do for me. Give us a little taste of what it's like to work with you.
Well, I work online and in person. I'm in Eastern Washington on the Idaho border. But I also am moving into more online, mostly because the type of interviewing I do is like a 5-element interviewing technique, where I really pay attention to the way people tell me things. Sometimes one phrase of someone can unlock this huge kind of treasure trove of symbols and understanding of how people approach life. So we do a long kind of 60-minute. It's a fun conversation. It doesn't really feel like a medical intake at all. It's more about really understanding, how do emotions feel in your body? How do you deal with stress? Because everyone deals with these things differently, and it gives really insight into what elements are in charge of the person at the time. So we have that conversation, and then from there, I do some recommendations, like food recommendations, flower essences, sometimes single herbs, sometimes formulas. I really only use kind of traditional Chinese formulas when someone has something acute going on, when people need a Band-Aid treatment. So I'm not a fan of Band-Aid treatments, but occasionally we need them.
Well, right. There's always those things. We have to stop the bleeding so that we can help the underneath part, whatever that would be. So,
Exactly.
I mean, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And so what I'll do, but when it comes to kind of constitutional treatment and really helping bring the body into alignment so you can get the healing done that you need to get done, I'll use plant essences or single or paired herbs. And usually that's just about taking an infusion, or even just meditating with the physical herb itself. Or if you're local to the herb growing, I'm like, let's go find it. I'll help you identify it.
Oh, so you're like a hands-on experiential, let's just get to the root of it all type person.
Yes. And it's all about spending the time out in nature. And what's lovely is through those conversations, there's always a story that emerges. And I do a lot of storytelling. I use a lot of traditional Chinese like mythology, and also just fables and myths throughout the entire world, because I think that they really help us understand archetypes that are at work in our life. I'm a firm believer that a story can heal someone. And so we can go from there, where once I really understand the elements that are at play, then we talk about what story is playing in your life at that moment and how we can help with that. And then really, how can nature help? Because nature has the resonance of the divine. When you're a plant or a tree, you're not sitting there worrying about how you're going to get water. You're just not.
Right.
You just are.
And they're not getting all nervous, like it's going to get windy tomorrow, or we don't know, or like that's not how it works.
Exactly. And so one of my biggest things is like, how can you just be? You know, not to say that like that's how I can be, but like I said, 10% of the time, or even 1% of the time, if you could just be, that would be amazing.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I think we would really be able to accomplish everything that our heart desires if we can just get to that point. So, what is it like to be unconditionally with no condition at all? And one of the things that we do work is to see if there are conditions to living. So I have had conditions to my life of I am safe, therefore I am.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have I am protected, therefore I am. And really thinking about, do you have conditions on being on your life? Because I don't think God has conditions on you existing.
Right.
So we really, we work through that. And sometimes that can be one visit, and sometimes that can be once a month for 3 to 6 months. Usually no more than twice a month, but really working through some of those issues and taking the time to reflect. You don't need to see someone, or even an acupuncturist sometimes, every week to really get work done. And sometimes it's better to take the time to walk away and to reflect and let it simmer and settle.
Now, I'm an acupuncture junkie, and I just told my acupuncturist a couple of days ago when I saw her, I said, I would come every day if you let me, because I love it. I love how I feel. I love the idea behind it. I can feel when all the meridians open up, like I can feel it working in my body because I'm so sensitive. And she just smiles. Okay, I'll see you in 2 weeks. I'll see you whatever. And I do whatever she says. Like I do, but I'm like, more is better, right? But not always. Sometimes it's the relaxing into the flow of it and allowing that is better. But our Western mind is like, ooh, more. If I can do more, I'll do more. And that's not the answer to the question.
Yeah. I have lots of people say that to me, and I'm like, this is because acupuncture is the easy button to get into a state. There's no reason why you can't do that on your own. And my goal is to help you do that on your own. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say that I see plenty of people for acupuncture once a week, twice a week, actually, especially my people who they're doing a lot and they're trying to maintain energy levels that might not be realistic if they weren't seeing an acupuncturist. But I consider acupuncture one tool in a huge amount of tools that Chinese medicine practitioners have. But I agree. If I could get acupuncture, at least once a week, that would be lovely too. Mostly because it feels like this beautiful pause.
Yes.
When I get up from acupuncture, I feel like I just did an hour's worth of yoga.
Mm-hmm. I have some of my most amazing insights and intuitions, not only laying there, but driving home.
Yeah.
Like shortly after, I'm like, whoa, this is great. And that's why I like it, because it's like it cleans out the gook or the fog or the static of whatever, whether it's internal or external, because I'm an empath and I have to deal with that, like all those different things. And it's just like, whoa, okay, let's get off the merry-go-round and clean it up for a minute. And then now let's see.
Yeah, in my opinion, you're after acupuncture, you're in perfect alignment. When the acupuncturist does their job, you're in perfect alignment. You're perfectly stacked. Like your heart is in perfect alignment with all the other organs. And so of course you get the full download at that time. I have lots of patients who experience that, and that's why they do it. And I often, like, it is my belief you can do that on your own. You really can. You can get there on your own. It just takes a lot of work sometimes. And so it's easier to just go get acupuncture, which is why I love to go get acupuncture as well.
I can do it on my own relatively easy now.
Right.
And at the same time, I think it feels really good to be nurtured that way. Like my energy system's being loved and nurtured with the needles. My acupuncturist like gets it, and she doesn't have to say anything. I just know she gets it. And so it's like it's like a big energy, spiritual nurture experience along with all the other cool benefits. And so I think it has such deep, profound connection and ability for us as humans, much more than people think. I've suggested it to clients before and they go, oh, I don't do needles or whatever. I'm like, that's not what I just said, but okay. So let's just dissect it, back it up, and let's look at why I'm saying that might be something to try. I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying you might want to give it a shot.
Some of my best patients who I love were terrified of needles when they first started seeing me. And I just think the stronger the resistance to the acupuncture, the more impactful it will be for them.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's beautifully put. I've never heard it that way. It's a great way to think about acupuncture. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love hearing everyone's experience of acupuncture because it's different for everyone.
Right.
I love hearing about the colors. I love hearing about the things people see. It's just amazing.
It is. It's fascinating to me. Now, you have an herbal apothecary in your home.
I do, yeah.
And will you talk about that? Okay, first of all, let everybody know what is an herbal apothecary and why on earth would you have one? And what do you do with it? I just think it's fascinating. I saw a picture that you put on social media of the herbal apothecary in your home. And I thought, I am so glad she has scheduled an interview because I'm going to ask her about this. It's fascinating. And so talk about that part of this and how that kind of goes with all the work you're doing.
Yeah, that's like another kind of side Laura thing. I have always been connected with plants from a very young age, and I spent a lot of time running around in the woods when I was younger. And it felt like a no-brainer. Like, I went to Chinese medicine school to be a licensed herbalist, not to do acupuncture, even though I love acupuncture now, and I do it all the time. I was there first to be an herbalist. And so an herbal apothecary, gosh, it can be many things, and lots of people use that definition to cover lots of different businesses. So I've been to some apothecaries where they just sell tea, or they sell a lot of different like botanical type of beauty products. Mm-hmm. My apothecary is a true compounding apothecary where I have over 400 single herbs that I will mix for other practitioners into formulas that they send me, and then I mail it or deliver it to their patients. And then, or individuals call me and ask me to make something for them. I feel that the plants talk to me, and I love to have them in my house now. It's pure kind of as a result of COVID-19 that I have my apothecary in my house now. I did have a retail location and decided to close it when I had to close, basically, because I'm in Washington State and we had to do a stay-at-home order. And I just went, you know what? Not worth it. So I remodeled my basement into my apothecary. And now I have them here, but there isn't an online consult that I do where, and I do most of them down in my apothecary, where they're talking to me. They say, oh, this is the one to do. This is what I want. And so when I talk about my kind of tagline for Palouse Herbal Apothecary is honoring the spirit of the herbs. And it's really because I think that those spirits, which are like nature spirits, really do have a resonance with each person. And there's a reason why, like Baiha, which is lily bulb, it's a tiger lily. Mm-hmm. And that herb, when combined with another traditional Chinese herb, is the remedy for something called lily bulb disease, which is this idea of, if just one more thing happens, I'm done. Right. I'm just done. Mm-hmm. And what American doesn't have that thought at one point?
At some point or other, and some people more than others. Yes.
Right. Which is why Lily Bulb is one of my like favorite. She lives in my garden. I sit with her all the time. It was definitely one of those herbs where like, oh, she's going to be in my garden because I can't take that formula all the time. She just needs to be here.
Just hang out right here.
But there's not there every single time I work with someone, those plants say something to me. They say, oh, they really need me. And it's like what I was talking about earlier, where a tree just is, a plant just is. And it's not like they don't have their own unique personality and their own resonance in the way that they exist in the world. Every plant just is. And as a human, to sit with that plant, that herb, highly medicinal or not, you really understand and take, like, you can match the resonance of that plant. So one way that I do that is, let's see, someone has chronic UTIs. It's not about throwing a bunch of herbs at them that get rid of bacteria. It's about throwing an herb at them that exists in the world in a way that lets water metabolism balance out. So like a mushroom, let's say. Fuling, poria. Ideal herb for balancing water metabolism in the person. And most of the time, chronic UTIs are about an overabundance of water or water in the wrong place or something like that. And so I really do think that with just a few plants that really show the body, hey, look, you can be in balance. Mm-hmm. Look at how I'm in balance when I live in my life.
Right, exactly. Like, come on, like, if I can live in balance, you can too. Come on, human, catch up with me.
Right, exactly.
Here's the example of what the pattern looks like.
Yeah.
Come play with me. Yes.
And so that, I think that's why herbs and I get along so well. And a long answer to why I have a bunch of herbs in my basement. But
I think that's really cool. Talking to you, I spent some time last summer on Pender Island in Canada with an herbalist who has been studying with the first people, all the indigenous tribes, for many, many, many years. I think he had something like the first, actual herb shop or whatever back in the 60s where he was living at the time. It wasn't Pender Island, it was somewhere else. Anyway, I was fascinated by meeting this gentleman, and so then he did this intercultural workshop. So of course I fly from Florida to Pender Island, Canada, diagonally across North America to go to this couple-day event. A lot of people thought I was a little bit nuts, but I wasn't, because one of the things that he taught us, real life, and I'm in the Pacific Northwest where you are, but like I don't have a reference point for that much. I've been there a couple times, but not like this, not hiking up and down mountains and doing stuff and checking out mushrooms and looking at this and seeing things differently. But he taught us how to attune to the plants and let them talk to you. And they talked to me, and it was funny because there was this one time where I said, they're telling us to take care of the young ones. And I kept hearing that over and over. And he translated it as children. I said, no, young ones, like young in something, just learning something, the new people. They don't have to be young in age. And it was really clear to me. And I'm like, wow, this is fascinating, And so then I meet you and the herbs talk to you, and I totally get it, because you're not the first person that I've ever interacted with, and they actually talked to me. The arbutus tree helped heal this back injury that I had from a car accident. There's still a little challenge with it, but I felt it just whip in and just kind of clear out stuff that was actually not in my back. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about that when you were talking. Very cool.
Exactly
cool.
Right. And we know it. All humans know it from our small traditions of, in our family, we have a tradition of when a parent passes away, we always plant a tree for them. Mm-hmm. And I know lots of families who have traditions like that. So even if we've lost this knowledge, we really know it. My mom looks at our hawthorn tree. I live next door to my parents. We are on the same block. And so she always says to me, I look at that hawthorn tree and I think of my mom, who's very prickly but has beautiful flowers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I can say with earnestness that tree healed a lot of wounds from my grandmother's passing. So they're always talking to us.
Mm-hmm.
Always. You just have to listen. It's the same way as our soul is always talking to us. You just have to listen.
Just have to listen. So you use all of these neat tools to help people just listen and get connected in a way that's so powerful that then they keep seeking it on their own.
Yeah.
That is a really amazing way to navigate your physical, mental, and emotional health. It's not the typical Western way that's full of intervention and never really looking at it. It's much softer and much more long lasting from everything I'm hearing from you. And so I love that we're talking about navigating these things in a non-traditional way, because I think it's time for changes to happen and people to start seeing that there's options and there's ways to handle it. It meaning the overall picture, right?
Absolutely. I agree.
That's really cool. And so you do online consults. So y'all, if you're really loving Laura Rose, like I'm loving talking to her, then reach out, look in the show notes and reach out to her and either make an appointment for a consult or follow her on social media or go to her website, because she'll help you out. And obviously she's really gifted. And I'm sitting here thinking, I might want to do a herbal consult because I want to hear what the herbs are telling her about what I need or not. Like, I think that's fascinating because I wonder, and the way I will figure it out is probably say, hey, I have to do that. Anyway, that's beside the point. I have great respect. I have great respect for how nature heals and can offer solutions that actually medicine comes, they started with plants when they started doing that. So let's get clear on that. And what no more beautiful way than with a beautiful marrying of lots of neat energy and historical things, and then with your own personal soft strength that you have.
Oh, thank you.
Really, it's really nice. It's very nice. So a couple other little questions. One would be, what is your most memorable food that you've ever eaten?
Oh gosh, that's so hard. I've had celiac disease the past 15 years or so. So do I go for nostalgia of things I can't have anymore?
Well, memorable. Memorable would be the operative word. What's something memorable that you've ever eaten? Just for fun.
Yeah, I love guava from the tree. Guava fruit from the tree. Or really anything in Hawaii that I had that I picked from a tree and ate.
Yes, those tropical fruits. Oh, yes.
Right? And just the experience of it, cutting it with your own knife and taking it. And I raise my own chickens and my own eggs and everything. And so I've just learned that having that experience really just feels fantastic.
Yes. I love that. I had a similar experience once when I did a coconut. I had the machete and cut it and then cut it open and then get the coconut water out of it. It's like, ooh, this is like decadent in its own way, Yeah, that's cool. I love it. That's beautiful. So we've covered a lot of ground, and you have answered all my little questions. So is there anything that you were wanting to share or talk about? Your links will be in the show notes and your full bio so that all of you guys can read more about Laura Rose, because she's very skilled at what she does. But is there anything that you wanted to share with all the listeners around the globe that I didn't ask you about, or that your heart is saying share it, or anything like that?
Really, I would tell everyone exactly what I tell all my patients, which is, I love you exactly the way you are right now in this moment.
So just let that in, right? Got to receive it. So if you were going to have a billboard that had any Laura Rose message on it, what would it be?
Well, I'm sure I love you.
I love you. Right?
it's there, gosh, I wish, working with the divine and cultivating that relationship, so many things are unspeakable and untellable. I wish I could just put that in a bill, like that feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Me too. There's no words. You can't. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for being on the show today.
You're welcome.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Thank you for all of the great information that you've shared with everybody and given us a whole exciting way to really open up on another level for ways to have vibrant, healthy lives that are fulfilling and joyful. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, everybody, you have been listening to Laura Rose Gage from Washington State, who is a gifted acupuncturist and herbal healer. So if you really loved what she said as much as I did, go on to the show notes and connect with her, follow her on social media, and let her know you heard her here on Someone Gets Me so that she can see that her wise words have touched you too. But until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, remember to keep your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star on purpose, here with a purpose. So go out there, play your music, let your light shine. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, be well.